Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order. Do we have four? Yeah. I'd like to call to order the City Council work session at 5 o'clock.
I'd like to call to order the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation joint work session with City Council. Time now is 5 o'clock. I will move into the public comment statement and then close that out. With regard to the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation, public comment, item 2, in accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that is made on an item that is not on the published final agenda will only be heard by the PCDC board. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the PCDC board. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. To my knowledge, no one has submitted a request for public comment, so we'll move to the next regular item, which is item 3A on the PCDC agenda. Item 2025-0261, joint meeting with PCDC Board and City Council for discussion regarding public Pflugerville Community Development Corporation budget priorities. Mayor.
All right. Very good. So we have the same item on our agenda, the joint meeting with the PCDC Board and City Council for discussion regarding Pflugerville Community Development Corporation budget priorities. So, Tracy.
Good evening. So yes, this is part of our fiscal 26 budget process, is to have these discussions and discuss these priorities as we move into the fiscal 26 budget. Just wanted to highlight real quick what's happened fairly recently with the budget and finance processes being moved over to the city, and highlighting just what that did for us. City now providing full financial services for PCDC. The budget process and the reporting aligns with the city practices, and we enhanced collaborations. We definitely reduced some costs with some duplications between the two, and you can see there what was highlighted on that. Just wanted to start with just talking about the budget real quick. This is the fiscal 25 budget, and in picture, separating out the budget into just meaningful categories: operations, workforce development, community engagement, incentives, and infrastructure. And so we have taken the debt and kind of allocated it amongst those same categories. So you can see how that lays out. This is actually taking those same categories and just putting dollars to it. So 8% in operations. The land acquisition for $100,000 was put in the budget for opportunities that might come along. The infrastructure of the 7.1 is considered a one-time. Really, it's using fund balance to construct. There's several road projects that are included in that $7 million. Incentives, those are already agreements that are on the books. And those amounts would be due in fiscal 25. And community engagement at 1.6. Then we have debt at 6.4. So this is a $19 million budget. 12.2 of it is revenue. So we're already assuming that we're drawing down available fund balance with this budget.
Can we go back to the last slide? I'm a little confused about the way that broke down. Okay, so you've got the infrastructure spending that is non-debt infrastructure spending, and then the 4%, which is infrastructure
On
paying
road
back
projects.
debt on previous projects.
Correct.
And community engagement, I see that, but explain to me what community engagement debt is.
That's going to be the recreation center portion of the debt, and also the water park.
I I think there could be an argument made. So it's kind of hard for us sometimes to put things in buckets per se. Councilman Rogers, like, for example, typhoon, you could call it an incentive because it started as an incentive, or you could call it community, like quality of life too. So thanks for asking. We'll try to drill down anytime you want into what those phrases mean.
Calling it community engagement, and when it's, it really is, with the rec center, that's not really, I mean, that is infrastructure. It's not necessarily economic
We
development
agree,
infrastructure,
actually.
but it's definitely infrastructure.
Yeah, I think community engagement was used previously, and I think we had been asked to use it with the same word. I would actually either call that infrastructure or quality of life, but infrastructure okay, so we've had this debate a lot in this
Yes.
app. So infrastructure for us, we believe that we typically use those words when it comes to streets, water and wastewater.
Yes.
Like that's kind of the words that we use infrastructure. So community engagement, I could argue also quality of life could be used in its place. All of these things, though, I could argue go to quality of life, right? Roads.
yeah.
So it's hard for, that's what I mean. It's like, we're just trying to give you all we're happy to change the words, whatever you want, but just trying to get you to see the different areas.
Or it tends to be a little more opaque if you use that as a catch-all vernacular.
Yeah, we were happy. And the budget breaks down, if you look at the current budget now, the line items have expanded a great deal over the past year. Yeah, we can get down in the granular for this. This was just to show a snapshot of kind of
I think it's important for the citizens to look at, okay, how much of this is debt, and what are we going into debt for? And I think transparency about that is very important.
Happy to, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Could I ask if I may, the community engagement on this slide, is that the non-debt community engagement, the 1.6 million?
1.6.
Yes.
All right, and what all is encompassed in that?
So the 600,000 is $300,000 that rolled over from a previous year and collected another 300,000, which came together for 600,000. The $1 million was line item as community infrastructure, but that was this current year's budget.
Are there any particular dedicated projects for that funding, or is that just a bucket?
Typhoon is
projects?
For the community infrastructure,
Not in
that
the,
was before.
not in the 1.6.
I'm sorry, that is
600
Downtown
is.
Plaza and Typhoon.
Not in the community engagement for the 1.6. That was $1 million extra that was put in PCDC's budget, plus the carryover, the 300,000 from last year,
Yes.
plus the current annual 300,000. So the 1 million is not earmarked for anything at this point.
But the 600 is earmarked?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't know that it's earmarked. I think
Well,
it's
yeah,
It's already
designated.
Yeah.
it's been requested and
Yes.
approved by the board.
Okay, and those are the city projects?
It was for downtown Plaza, the
Okay.
downtown East Plaza.
And the 1 million not yet
Yes.
encumbered?
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, isn't PCDC is able to fund parks and recreation projects specifically called out as parks and recreation, correct? Would
Well,
that be
yes.
a better term in some of these places? I don't know. Yeah, because community engagement.
So just
I don't know.
just a bit of I guess you can say a backstory to the term community engagement. There was a process that took place, obviously before me, that wanted to create a grant opportunity for the public organizations to be able to come to PCDC. And let's say that they wanted to plant trees. Let's say a nonprofit organization wanted to come and plant trees, and they wanted to say, hey, we're going to put down 1,000 trees. It's going to cost $100,000. We'll put $70,000 up. Will you kind of leverage it and put $30,000 in?
That makes
That's a
sense.
challenge,
And
right?
that's, yes. And so that's where community engagement came from. When it came time for the $300,000 conversation to take place, it was that's where the funds that went to the city projects came out of the 300,000. So community engagement already had a process, and they just used those funds in order to fund that opportunity out of that line item.
That makes sense under the term of community engagement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, I do have a question about that, given our friend that comes to visit and speak for the last few times. Community grants or challenge grants, would something like that be available for the baseball little league? Or does it have to be like a city facility or?
Now that's a stretch.
I would seek
Yeah.
legal counsel, and
Okay.
no, we do
Yeah,
not
that's a
believe that would be a lawful expense under law for
Well,
PCDC.
building new fields would be a capital investment. That would be legitimate.
But not maintenance.
No, not maintenance.
Not M&O, but they have infrastructure needs.
Well, and there's the marketing.
And it would have to be the school district to come.
It's not the city's field.
Yeah.
That's probably
We can't.
Oh, but there is the opportunity. I can't remember what the legislative allowance is. Is it 10% for marketing expenditures? Anyone else
Something
remembers
like that, yeah.
You're in the right ballpark. It is somewhere around 10%.
It seems like marketing expenditures are kind of a catch-all for doing projects like that.
We would have to be we would be riding a very fine line because typically marketing is marketing the community for job opportunities and
So what
attracting
if you're having a major national baseball tournament coming to the area, and you were talking about Pflugerville, marketing Pflugerville, would that count?
if we could tie it to hotel stay, to jobs. I mean, the argument can be made. I'm going to always look to my legal counsel because I don't look good in orange with numbers in my back. Yeah. I'm gonna, yeah, right. I'm gonna look to Josh before I go to saying yes.
So if someone was interested from payball, I don't know what the acronym is right now. They can come to you and you can speak to your legal counsel about the possibilities of such.
I think it was the school district, still?
No, because
They own it.
Because it's the entity itself. It's like, so even if like we did something for, like if Paisley came to us, Paisley uses our field, right? But it would be the entity of Paisley itself that would come to speak about something. So that sounds like they should go speak to it.
Now, we'll tell you that's going to be a hard sale because at the end of the day, yes, they are coming here. Yes, they are in the ballparks, but I need to know hotel stay. I need to know how much tangible income and disposable income are they bringing to the community. Because I know a lot of baseball activities that take place where people come into your community, they might stop at Whataburger and then they're out. That's not economic development. That's a visit. So
I mean, I was involved in several challenge grant applications. One with another entity to improve city-owned property, and another to add park features to a privately owned property that was going to be available for public use.
Is it available for public use?
It is.
Are you sure? Are people still hitting golf balls down there?
I don't have the golf balls, but there's no lock. You don't have to have a key. It's right on the trail, which is accessible to the public. So so that was under the challenge grant. That was part of the Parks and Recreation, not necessarily a marketing thing, but I feel like maybe we could have a conversation, or it's something that could be explored.
Gosh, that was like a decade ago or something.
Okay.
It was.
Just wanted to point out one more thing on this slide, the fund balance. This has been calculated using the ending fund balance of fiscal '24 unaudited, and taking out the $6 million that went towards the 52 acres, and also taking out the $7 million that was assumed in this budget to be drawing down reserves. So that's how you get to the 13.6.
Cool.
I almost had a panic attack, but I've gotten myself together now.
So the 7 million includes 6 million and something else, or it's 6 million plus 7 million?
The 7 million is spending down reserves for the infrastructure projects.
Yes.
And the 6 million is the cash contribution for the 52 acres. Yes. So this just lays out, I'm not going to read through all of these, but this gives you a little bit more detail on what is being funded through operations, the land acquisition, the workforce development, just looking for direction on whether these are still priorities for PCDC to be funding. Same with infrastructure. These are the two projects that were included in the fiscal 25 budget. These are the specific incentives and what is being funded through community engagement. And then we just moved to fiscal 26. This is really just a base budget. All it's doing is taking fiscal 25's budget and stripping out the one time and adding what we know is commitments. And so if we look at the numbers, operations, just inflation, 3%. Workforce development was left at the same amount. The incentives dropped down to 350 based on the agreements. Community engagement went back down to the reoccurring annual amount that we've seen in the past of 300,000. Our debt now goes up from 6.4 to 8.5 because now that includes the debt for 52 acres. And the unallocated is just math. It's just the projected revenue of 12.2 with all of these others taken out of it. So it's basically what's left out of that that can then be either reserved and rolled into fund balance or prioritized into a different bucket.
Do you think that flight assumption's a good assumption?
For all the categories?
Revenue.
Or?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh,
I was literally referring to that, yeah.
So it looks flat, but sales tax is rounded up, but interest is rounded down, so it
Okay.
ends up being flat.
And you would say it's more.
And it's proposed. Yeah, so.
We're just being conservative.
No, that's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm
That's
just
one.
verification.
It'll change in the next 6 months.
So are there other city park projects that don't have a funding source yet that might be eligible for either the unallocated or the community engagement?
Behind it.
There will always be parks projects that could use funding. I mean, for the remainder of time, I think I could speak for the next 100 years.
You're such a hater.
I mean, there are cities that spend their entire sales tax just on parks. So I would argue that there will always be, I mean, at 300,000, it's
Yeah.
not very much in comparison to what we spend in parks. There will always be.
Yeah.
I do have a project identified for the fiscal 25, 1 million that I don't have funding for. And so I have been in conversation with the Parks Department to say, hey, this is a good project to go and ask.
Because I would like to see there's,
Before we,
oh, go ahead.
talk about parks, I'm gonna always advocate for economic development,
Oh, sure.
small business development. There are some projects in the SEDS documents that obviously predates me before I got here, but there's a SEDS document that outlines priorities that we should be looking at with the dollars. And so the two main projects
Nice
that are
softball.
discussed are Innovation Center and wetlands. It was a discussion, I've seen the council meeting and the PCDC board meetings as it relates to the SEDS document. And I've heard kind of the feel, so to speak, of these two topics. But the SEDS document, it is what it is. It is the document that we're using at the moment. And it's a guide. It kind of tells us if we do, A, we can expect B to occur, and if B doesn't occur, then we know who to go back and beat over the head, which is the consultant who said that if we do A, B would, operate or exist. So I love parks. For the record, Jerry loves parks, really do. I plan on passing one up today, maybe two. But I just want to make sure that before we discuss park options, that we also take a look at options that may be able to help us grow jobs and attract industry that lives beyond just tilt walls, which is something I've heard. I'm gonna go on and say it. And so these are the two, I've heard a lot about tilt walls, so I will tell you, I look at tilt walls a whole lot different now than I did before I got here. But these are the two options. I really want to get a gauge. That's why it also says open discussion, because I've shared this with my board all the time. As the executive director, I execute what I'm directed to do. The SEDS document tells me that if I do A, then B occurs. But if we go in a different direction, I just want to make sure that we kind of have a unified idea as to what the expectations are going to be based off of where we allocate resources. So that's my TED Talks for now.
Can you elaborate on what's an innovation center and wet labs?
So what I gathered from the conversation, the Innovation Center really is, there's this conversation of the chicken or the egg first, right? Who's going to put office space down in Pflugerville? Is it going to be the private sector or the public sector? Does the private sector and the public sector start dating and get married and do something together, which would be a PP3? Or do we stand on opposite ends of the table and just look at each other and decide to do something first and then see if they'll come? Sometimes that happens. Sometimes the public sector has to go first and then the private sector comes in afterwards. Sometimes the private sector shows up first before the public sector gets a chance.
Would that include co-working space?
Yes.
Good, yes.
Quite honestly, and there was an article that was just recently put out in the Austin Business Journal that talked about suburban office space because Austin downtown is getting hammered really badly. Yeah, it's ugly. And they're still building office space down there. I don't really understand why, but it is what it is.
Because they're locked in.
But yeah, and that's really what this innovation center kind of surrounds based off of the SEDS. Now,
There was some conversation about co-working space while Amy was here. Is any part of that moving forward, or is that still happening? There was some conversation around this before.
that depends on what this body and this body tells me to do. So, if the council and PCDC feels that Innovation Center still needs to go forward, we're going to look for what we need to do in order to get an Innovation Center done here. And wet labs too, as wet as we want it. Either way, whichever direction we're advised to do, that's where we go.
Right, at this,
Mr. White?
right, at this point, what we have is the SEDS. It's not the absolute thing we have to follow, but it is the document that we all see. We're all trying to stay on the same page. So is our executive director, Jerry Jones, has been touching on, this is what we have in place. And your point about the organization that we had talked to about the previous co-work type space, that's not off the table. I mean, it's not active, but we're still maintaining a relationship with them to see at some point in the future something can happen. But the key thing is right now, this is the direction we're heading as far as PCDC and what we're asking our executive director to do. So if the city council has a different idea or insight, now would be a good time to let us know.
Well, I think we approved a 3.0, so I would imagine we ought to be on the same page.
Right.
This is an affirmation moment, so.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we
You're just like, are you sure? You're sure? That's what
We changed our mind?
It's never a good idea to ask us if we changed our mind, right? Because there are certainly things in there that I didn't agree with, but this is our negotiated,
Exactly.
voted on way forward. So I think, despite, not agreeing with it entirely, I think we need to move forward with it.
I think it's a solid plan. I think going back to what you said, Kim, about the Innovation Center, the one in Cedar Park is doing extremely well, and there's some other areas that are doing that. I know that we've talked about other places in Pflugerville, how that works. So I think the only thing that shifts that conversation is the return to work that's being required of some entities and seeing how that actually looks in the marketplace. But that's why we got the business folks. These are, I mean, it's
Right.
their
And
job
so-
to look at that and see how that works.
Correct. And so to that point, just alone, as far as the office space, just remember looking back through at the last 40 years where we go through recessions and other things, there have been a large number of commercial projects, office centers, think of Houston back in the 70s and so forth. And so when it goes down, people come in, they build it because it's an inventory issue. And that's where we are with this metropolitan area. People are looking at it from a standpoint of inventory type issue when it comes to physical properties, office, other types of things. Because we really are at the stage where the price of land is such that if you're going to do it, you might as well do it at some point where you know you can. And that's what I think we're seeing. Businesses, development areas in that regard are coming in because they know they can at this time. So let's get it on the ground and then just properly manage it, keep it in top Class A shape. And then once the market turns, they're golden.
Right, and I think regarding wet labs, to your point, that hasn't changed. Now we can talk publicly about UT Taylor and their Taylor campus.
Right.
And A&M is also expanding as well, you know, are aware, in Williamson County. So the opportunity to partner with Scientific and get the jobs that we keep talking about, the quality jobs, impact, that's still there, you know, from that. And I think that the only thing that really has a conversation with is that making sure that you guys are assured, as you just did right here, that, hey, listen, we don't want to go down this path and all of a sudden you guys say, dude, we don't want that. What were you thinking? You know, et cetera, out there as well.
I reserve the right to change my mind.
Well.
And the other thing is, if these are our top priorities, I want to make sure that we are actually, I want to piggyback. Are we actually talking about higher education? Is that not one of the priorities? Or is that part of the open discussion piece?
Yeah. I think the higher education thing is an answered question. We are moving forward with any opportunity we have in that regard.
Yes.
It's not on there though.
It ties into several other things that we have.
Okay.
So, dot 4. Fourth dot.
Yeah.
It was on there on the sets. I remember we.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
It wasn't my top three.
What I'm hearing is we feel like we've already made a lot of progress on it. I know we did with some land purchases, but I still want to see it documented
Yeah, I
as
just
something that
realized
we're
that.
actively pursuing. I don't think we can tick that box yet.
You need to.
Yeah.
We
So
haven't seen
if I may, so when we're looking at budget, that's also why there is an extremely healthy fund balance. You know, for the budget, we don't typically put in a lot of guesswork.
Right.
That's why you just see in the incentives what the done deals are. But the fund balance for FY '26, my quick math is, you know, it's about 126% of operations, incentives, debt, those things that you kind of have to do. If I take that percentage, take that 13 million, and then what you have to do is what I'm calling it, you're at over 100% fund balance. So that's the healthy part that says we can do some things. And that'll be the philosophy decision of these two bodies is, do you want to hold that money? Or are you waiting for a big whale? Do you want to do these things? But you're in a healthy financial state.
So can I ask about the Innovation Center and the wet labs? Is the plan to use incentives to get businesses to come and create those, or is the funds for us creating them?
Okay. I'll speak and then I'll let Jerry. From the standpoint of us creating anything, it's only if we see that there's, based upon the opportunity cost, we'll have to put in what's the return from the standpoint of the citizens. But for the most part, we want to go to the people who know how to do it and work with them to get it done.
That
Jerry?
was the most streamlined way to say that. Ditto. That's really what this is about, the exploratory phase. Sure, a consultant told us that these are the two things that we need to do. The question now becomes, one, who are the partners that we need to identify to be able to work with to gain that? I think we already had some interest in an innovation incubator type of accelerator type of program already before, re-engaging those folks and seeing if there's still some possibility of kind of reigniting that relationship, or looking to see if there's other relationships out there and building a true ecosystem for entrepreneurs. But one of the things that I say often is it's not really good to be in a place of not knowing what you don't know.
Right.
And I feel like the strategic plan / SEDS, whatever you want to call it, it says this is what we should be doing. I think we have to go deeper and identify, okay, what does it look like now? How much square footage do we need? You know, where is the absolute best location based off of what you see in other centers of innovation or innovation centers, based off of what other communities and other areas are doing where it's working? Where's the prime location? What are some of the factors that shows growth for those particular projects, including wet labs? You know, sometimes certain projects want to be X amount of feet or miles away from a particular hospital or a particular other area where there's clusters. So those are the types of things that we need to identify, and it's that C-word consultant trying to identify what are the best pathway forward in order to accomplish those two goals, if they need to be accomplished, because the report could have told us to do this, but now when we go back and do research, the market could have changed, and we don't want to force something if the market is telling us that we shouldn't do it. So,
Can I ask a question along those lines? Besides returning to work, does the new administration change or redirect any of the needs and priorities that we set in place before?
In my opinion, no, go ahead, Jerry.
I think for me, it's too early to tell, because we're getting information from DC that kind of goes back and forth like a ping pong. So I mean, until it is dead set that says this must be done at this date at this time, I think that's when you can really study and identify what the cause and effects are going to be. Right now, it's just too fluid. I mean, you don't really know who is giving directive and where it's coming from, and if it's something that you can really, base sound, practice and beliefs off of. So it's a little too early to tell, in my opinion.
And that would be with any leadership role, as far as the governmental agencies. We just have to, we're watching it play out. And we will, from our standpoint, we respond accordingly, based upon, again, the opportunities that it presents to us.
The only one, and this isn't a personal opinion, the only clear thing is, I think, be prepared to do it yourself. So, don't necessarily have the government to rely on from grants and what have you. So, Be prepared to fund it yourself, do it yourself.
It's good advice for your entire life.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this particular slide?
One quick thing I want to say. I'm going to loop back to parks, and I think some of y'all were around when I was around at the beginning, many years ago with PCDC. I remember my first year on the board. The budget was like just under $2 million. In revenue, and I think we funded $100,000 in parks or public safety projects. I know the budget the revenue has grown dramatically. I'd really like to see a commensurate commitment to parks. I know we want to make sure that we focus as much as we can on the economic development, but I think a concerted, commensurate focus on parks, something that's reserved just for that, something that we can make sure we're making that commitment in the community would really be helpful.
How about a nice park over in the co-working space for me to look out and maybe go take a walk?
That's what they say, seeing green from your window improves quality of life.
I don't think I just don't think it's either or. I think that.
I don't think it's either or.
I think you can do both.
Yeah.
It makes sense to your point. One of the things that we continue to see in our surveys is that people are in Pflugerville because of parks and our trails. That's one of our high priorities. So I'm excited because the work that y'all are doing, they're excited to be working with y'all. It's great to see y'all are rowing in the same direction. That's pretty exciting. Interested to see what you guys are gonna be able to do together.
Trista, would you go back to that? Oh, there it is, yeah. So on this slide, we have a unallocated line item of just a little over $1 million. And I think that might be a discussion topic for us and for PCDC board members in terms of what is it, I mean, unallocated, is it reserved for, I guess it's open, right?
So I think your options,
Yeah.
you could move that to fund balance. You
It's
could,
building a war chest, right?
Yeah.
We want to build a little bit of a war chest, but we've also got that 300,000 in community engagement, and I think that should probably be about twice what it is.
So, based off of the wet lab and the innovation center, that's gonna eat.
It's gonna
you
eat up a
think
whole lot, and
Yeah, it's
if
gonna
we
eat
if we have any additional debt service, certainly.
However, if we're talking about changing community engagement, and increasing it, are we saying that you all would like to see us direct instead of the 300,000 going to either the city or to a community organization, you would just like to see the 3 plus another 3 go straight to the parks?
Not necessarily straight to the parks. I like the idea of the community coming together and help us direct that into some sort of parks or public safety project.
Let me say, I also remember, Doug, when the PCDC didn't have any money. And I laughed a little bit when you said you had $2 million.
I know, it was lower than that when you started.
When I was there, it was 900,000, and we were so excited. And our budget for parks was about the same then. But the city budget for parks was much, much lower then. And the city was, had a lot less money from property taxes and sales taxes. I felt very much at the time that our parks were starving. I don't get the sense that our parks are starving now. If I thought that, we didn't have enough money, say, for shade structures, that would be a problem. But I don't see a shortage on the parks now. I do, like the idea of the PCDC doing community development as well as economic development, but I really want them to focus primarily on the economic development end of it. And if the Parks Department says, hey, we desperately need another $100,000 to do a particular project, I think the PCDC should be open to that. But budgets expand to fill the money available. If we set up a $600,000 community engagement kitty, somebody will come knocking. The pigs will come to the trough if you fill it up. I'm not sure that we want to have a dedicated larger number. If people come to us and they say, hey, we've got this really great project, certainly consider the really great project. But just saying we've got money available for any project strikes me as an invitation to abuse. And I would be opposed to doing a blanket increase along those lines.
So we coordinate that with our Parks Capital Improvement Program. We couple that with our list of undeveloped parkland and our prior stated goals with the Parks Department of having parks within a certain distance of individuals. If we come forward with a park CIP and we say, hey, we need this much from PCDC to help fund the park CIP, that's something you'd be on board with?
Yeah, that sounds like the kind of thing that is a well thought out, individual, one-time request for expenditure that's outside of the regular city budget. Yes.
Okay. We're locking you in on that comment.
But
This is discussion.
generally speaking, the parks budget, as it has grown over the years, should be more than adequate to fund those kind of demands.
So I understand what you're saying. I do want to point out that there are still several pieces of city parkland that are undeveloped and have been for over a decade. And I agree that our existing parks have all gotten facelifts. That they're, the average age is 5 years or less, but there still are communities that have acres and acres of lots of weeds next to their neighborhoods and don't have a park yet. And so those are the types of projects that I would like to see move forward in any, and figure out the funding source, but I am advocating for that because those residents have not had access to the parks and trails in the same way that some of the other areas have.
Well, based on Councilmember Rogers' comments, I mean, it sounds like that's a plan or idea that he would be on board with. So,
That's what I heard.
yeah.
When I ran the first time, I said the city needed 4 priorities, and the first one that I listed was parks.
There we go.
Parks, police, water, and roads.
Okay, so this is actually a discussion, okay? It's not in the SEDS, but it's a discussion, and certainly you're listening from the council leadership. But, I think the PCDC leadership is just as significant, and the unallocated, whether it's $1 million or 10 million, I think it's a matter of flexibility in terms of giving us options. When I say us, city council and PCDC, in terms of whatever opportunities may come along, whether they're economic or whether they're recreation or whatever it may be. So I think those topics are still open for discussion when they appear. At least that's my view.
Okay.
One other thing that we did not put on here, and I apologize. We also, SEDS also outlined that we should be a little bit more creative in how we go about incentivizing retail development. We cannot incentivize the actual retail because of us being 4B, but there are some creative things that we can do. I don't have to look over at this council. I've already looked at my council at the last meeting, and he didn't have heart palpitations, so we should be fine. But public infrastructure reimbursements are well within the guidelines as long as the developer reaches certain ad valorums and certain sales tax requirements. There are some creativity that we can do. I think in my head as the executive director, I'm identifying what monies we have to put to use and then how to see the sales tax grow in order for other pots and buckets of money to be able to be used for the projects that I'm hearing are near and dear to you all's heart. I don't want to come off as if I'm not in love with parks, because I am. I used to walk in them before I ran into double stuffed Oreos. I probably need to run back out there. But I just want you all to know, both the PCDC board and the council, to know that that is something that I do see. There are some things in the SEDS that says if we do A, B should occur, right? So if we do identify creative ways to try to boost public infrastructure as it relates to retail, I'll make sure I'm very clear on that could help spur some additional development, thus spurring some additional sales tax creation.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Did we go through the slide? Adam, you have something?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
He doesn't want to get
Mr. Thompson, you haven't said a word?
Oh, no, I fully support what Director Jones and President White have said. I think Rudy's comment is spot on. I think there's an alignment within us and between the board and the city council that, we need to strike while the iron's hot and make good decisions for the community. And I think we're on that path to do so.
I agree.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree as well. As far as the parks and everything goes, I'm sure that there's a 5-year, 10-year plan on how parks are developed. And so to use money that's already allocated for other things, where's the park money going that the city already collects and where those plans are as well, right? So we just want to take money that we have here that we can use for other developments and go to city parks. We're going to do that, but we have to be prudent in each area because we want to bring in more jobs and high-paying jobs here into the Pflugerville, right? So with that, then you'll have more money for do things within the city as well.
Okay.
Oscar?
Oh.
No additional comment.
Well, I think, let me just make this comment because I sit on both boards, I guess it's going to make sense, is that, with our new executive director, Jerry Jones, and, the development that he's going to have to go through in terms of his staff development and reaching out to the community and all the stakeholders and the power brokers and the landowners, and that's a big challenge. It is, and especially coming in brand new. But what I do see, and with this particular board, is just lining up a vision that's going to move Pflugerville forward in terms of, obviously growth is happening. We can't stop the growth. It's just going to happen. But I think if we can put the economic development pillars in place, wherever they may land, as we see those opportunities, as we, the PCDC board, sees those opportunities, I think that we can bring some robust initiatives and projects to council that says, hey, this is going to work and this is what it's going to do. And, and Jerry, I agree with you, the more investments that we make correctly, the more additional retail revenue we'll have and ad valorem taxes, because that's obviously very important to the city. So.
Caesar?
I'm good. No, I think that I'll just ask this council to continue to let this board and the executive director do what they do best. It took a long time to put this together. I think we have a great board and a great leader on this, leading us as the executive director. And so just ask this council to listen to their wants, needs, and guidance, and can't go wrong.
But PCDC cook.
There we go.
There you go.
I do appreciate what you said about the infrastructure to support the retail, because what people are telling me, when are we going to get this restaurant? When are we going to get that restaurant? They want those types of services so they can stay here in the city. So I do think that's
I
important.
want those types of
Yeah, exactly.
I like them. I'm always looking for a new restaurant to explore. So we do have a relationship with Retail Strategies. I hope they're listening, because if they don't give us a good list of restaurants pretty soon, we're going to be out looking for a new retail group. I just need people to perform. Got a contract. I need you to bring what you said you're going to bring. Otherwise, stay home. So that's just, I'm sorry, that's just how it is. You either perform or you don't. It's one of the two. So I looked at the list, not that excited with the list that we have currently.
Is this the list the consultants brought to you, or
it's
Retail
the list that they
Strategies?
said that they spoke to at the conference, and I want to know, why did they spend their time talking to those folks? I'm sure it was a great conversation, but I'm not excited about talking about racetrack at the gas station. That's just not. That's not what I want to stand in front of I know the staff heard me when I was in my office and I looked at the list. I said, I know you've got to be kidding me. And they were like, oh, here you go. So
Sounds like the list we saw last time.
So we have some work to do when it comes to the retail palette, because that's not good.
There's an interesting conversation to be had there, and I'm sure there's a good ROI on infrastructure for restaurants. I'm sure that'll bring us a lot of good sales tax. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Well, I remind people, our community to the north of us has a lot of restaurants, but the residents come here to shop.
Yep.
So
We go there to eat, and they come here.
We'll take that any day. But any complaints?
Let's keep both in here.
Any complaints about restaurants, though, moving forward, go to Melody. We're all on the same page, right? Like we're all on the same.
Well, I haven't figured it out yet, because as far as I can tell, we have a higher median household income and a lower cost of living than a lot of these other areas around us. So I'm trying to figure out why we're not getting as much. So maybe your retail consultants can help us figure that out.
I got one comment. I'll tell you offline.
So
I've heard that one too.
developers, but it's still kind of early. You're always going to get some one-offs. I'm looking for kind of a uniformity in what the statements are, and once I kind of get a pretty cross section of it, I'll definitely be sitting down with city leadership and having a conversation with Serena, just kind of based off of what I'm hearing, so that we make sure that we're in alignment. Because quite honestly, I respect both boards, but if there's something that we can do internally to address whatever's being said or what have you, I think that it's probably best that we work together in order to address those concerns. And the end goal is to get a restaurant here so I can eat. I mean, so that the public can eat. And so, just sure that we're aligning the
Just remember, it wasn't that long ago, we shopped and ate out of Pflugerville. We had either one, so come a long way.
We have.
We got to remind people, because remember, the average Pflugerville citizen's been here 5 to 7 years. So that's a little different.
Target or Home Depot.
So back in the old days.
That's the way to put in the mark and say, no, tell them about the olden days. Not getting socks.
So just real quick,
We actually went to Taylor to shop at a Safeway, when they had a Safeway.
Yeah, so just real quick, I know retail is obviously a common thing that we talk about in restaurants, a common thing, daytime population. I feel like that's what brings restaurants. But, I think more importantly, we have that $1 million, but we should also be cognizant, we talk about wet lab, we talk about innovation center. There's a whole lot of industry coming to Central Texas. There was a big defense tech conference last week. Things that spin off of South by. We think of GovTech and SureTech. And so I think Pflugerville, if we can take advantage of that, with Jerry, while he's meeting with developers, it's also up to us to get out there as both board and council and, put us in front of new groups. So, whether it's a statewide venture capital group or, whether it's some sort of panel in AI, and I know AI is a buzzword, but it was the first thing that came to me. I think that's where we can take advantage and start getting people thinking about, hey, industry is here. And with Crystal building her entrepreneurship group as well, I think this is where, if we can firm this up, then maybe we can start, these restaurants can notice, there's a lot of business activity in Pflugerville. I've talked to Doug about this, but our hometown didn't become a culinary hub until maybe 10 years ago, but it was the daytime population that brought the culinary hub. So it's up to us to also get out there, whether it's getting on panels, whether it's meeting the right folks. I went to a legislative happy hour, was it 2 weeks ago? I was talking to the VP of Student Affairs in North Texas, and I said, hey, where do you partner? Who do you partner with? Where do you partner? And frankly, they're only in DFW. And, it's the same with other universities. Where does Tech go? Where does Houston go? Where does A&M go? So, if we get ourselves into these conversations, and we get these folks on board, that's how maybe we solve that retail problem as well.
That's how things happen.
Excellent.
I did offer up to Executive Director Jerry we should be at South by Southwest next year. We should have a presence. I know. So we should have a presence.
They should be here.
Well, the conference. Well, the conference is, and it is amazing the amount of people, because I go every year to the conference, and it's amazing how many people are they get to Austin, but they don't want to live in Austin.
Right.
So you can meet these startups and sit on these panels and do all those things, and I'd like to see Pflugerville there.
Well, and it's not just South by, right? There's so many other things that take place in Austin, and it's, how do we take advantage of those? Are we in the I know obviously Jerry works a lot with Opportunity Austin, but are we in the conversation when businesses talk about a soft landing and a relocation? Are we in talks with like the international group of Opportunity Austin when they go to various countries, and do they know that they can invest in Pflugerville and not just downtown Austin?
Well, there are some of our friends that I won't mention that are in those conversations that we need to talk to. And they're not politicians.
Which makes it better.
In my opinion.
All right, Mr. White?
So so we're good?
Yep.
All right. So I have a motion to close our item.
Second.
Okay. Made the motion. Jeff second. Our meeting is adjourned. PCDC is finished.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor?
Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And Jerry, thank you. And we will go on with our agenda. And our next two items are executive session items. 2B is executive session discussion regarding Gin Tract adjacent to the Downtown East project pursuant to section 551.087 of the Texas Government Code. 2C, consultation with legal counsel pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code regarding breach of contract release of 101 East Pecan Street. We are in executive session at 5:56. All right, we have 4.
Yeah, no.
Okay, we are back
do one
from
Monday.
executive session at 6:30. No action was taken. We're adjourned.
Right.